I'm going to now cover some of the control functions for the viewer that we may have missed in previous tutorials, with the exception of shaders. Those will get their own tutorials. So windowing, anything like that, it's not going to be covered here. Okay, so let's start up the server. I'm going to open my console with Control-Shift-I. Let's go ahead and resize. So some of the functions we missed are sort of state-like functions. So just getting the viewer width. So this will be the width in pixels, width in inches. These are both good functions to get some information to return to yourself. So that way, like, if you say, like, well, this tumor would never show up if the pixel count or the inch count is below a certain number. So if those numbers aren't high enough, as high as a specific number, then we're just going to throw out that data. It is worth mentioning, though, if I zoom my page and then, well, okay, let's not hit resize yet. So obviously the image is smaller. I can get inches and it's going to return the same thing. It doesn't know. And then if I hit resize and get inches, it will return something different, but it's going to be wrong. That sucks, but what are you going to do? Normally, though, on PC anyway, this scales to what should be a comfortable size for your participants, so that will decrease the likelihood of them actually zooming the page. Issue here would be on mobile devices if you're targeting those, which I don't recommend, but if you do, anytime I click on a text box in mobile, it's going to zoom in on that text box and always offer the option to resize my viewer. That said, this only pops up because we made it so. This has nothing to do with the viewer. This is just a feature that we've offered external to that. So you can just not offer that feature, and that would help a little bit. It still wouldn't be perfect because that on mobile, their image size is getting zoomed around all crazy like. So it won't be as reliable. Not that it's ever perfectly reliable, but it definitely will be less reliable on mobile. You can also get the height. That normally won't matter, though. You can't get the height in inches, but you can, get your scaling factor from your inches and your width, and, get your height in inches if that does happen to be different. Ours is set to be square, so I feel like that's common. So your height and your width are always going to be the same thing. Let's see. There is a kind of important function, get start time. If you really care about when things happen, this is basically when the viewer loads, it calls JavaScript's date.now function. And then everything after this, so if I were to call viewer get uptime, these numbers always count up from this number. So when the viewer first loads, viewer get uptime, if you were to call it right after that, will return 0. You're never going to call it right after that, but that's what it is. This is also the time that is used when you get your logs. So if I get scroll times, okay, these times are all, the same as get up time. So the next would be input. So you have your drag distance here. Let me change to my other slide. Nothing, okay. Okay, so as we had talked about earlier, this is pretty slow because the slices are so thin. So we can, if we want to, set our drag distance. So this would be something, we covered it in the config that you can set the drag distance, for all viewers. That would be a default. But if you do want to set or have like a drag distance setting, in your own viewers, like, just over here or something, be like, enter a new drag distance if you want to, or drag sensitivity or something to call it, to make it go faster. We can do that. Okay, so if I were to set it to 1, this will basically be 1 pixel. For every 1 pixel I drag, it, goes 1 slide. So, It's actually not so bad for this image. That said, though, it's terrible for this image. So I'm going to set my drag distance back to something maybe a little bit more meaningful. You can also set the scroll limit, which we discussed in the config. So, you know, I mean, my scroll wheel always pretty much inputs 1, so scroll limit doesn't actually do anything for me. If for some reason maybe a computer is very slow and it is returning values that are greater than 1 but very infrequently, you might want to up the scroll limit to let them scroll through multiple frames, you know, per scroll. I don't know if that would feel any better, but it might be something. More importantly might be the viewer scroll set scroll. So this one, you know, obviously 1 by default, but if I were to set it to -1, that will invert my scroll, if that's, you know, something somebody might care about. And then sensitivity is applied after the limit, so if I were to set it to 10, then, you know, first it limits it to 1 as it comes in, and then it multiplies it by 10, so each scroll, you know, scrolls by 10. Not the worst thing. That said, if you do anything like this by default, you probably just shouldn't have this many slices in your image. There's no reason to send that much data across the internet if you're skipping every 10 images. For the keys, we can sort of set, we can basically simulate key input. So this takes 2 arguments. So the first would be the key code, and that's like sort of, you know, is it the scroll up key or the scroll down key? So flag viewer, and you know, we got all these flags provided to us, so we are going to scroll. Let's scroll up since we're mostly down already. And then the second argument is whether this key was pressed or released. So flag viewer, and it is pressed down. And you can see basically it thinks that I'm always pressing the scroll up key. So even if I were to scroll down, it'll fight me and keep scrolling back up until I call this and tell it to release. If you want to show the viewer a specific slide and you don't want them to scroll away from it, you can lock the scroll. So viewer scroll lock, true. So you notice this also removes the scroll bar when that happens, letting the user know that they're not going anywhere. Okay, let's turn it back off with false. Okay, gives me back my scroll bar, and you know, I'm free. There is a similar thing. So for example, I clicked here, so I can do viewer. You know, obviously I'm showing somebody something. I might also want to make sure that they can't add any new clicks or remove any clicks. You know, that's not the worst thing. So viewer click lock, true. So turn on the click lock, and now, you know, it's like you told them this click was wrong. Well, you know, they might want to remove it now. I don't know. They can't. So, you know, that's how you block certain input. Very important function. So whenever we actually go to a viewer page, you know, so whenever we, you know, set it to show this image, what we're doing is we're calling this function. We're saying viewer set slide, and then this is the first one, so it would be 1. We might be also saying this can take an optional second argument where I'm setting a specific slide. So for example, I'm already on 1. What if I want to show them the 50th slide? I can do that, and it'll go to the 50th slide. It's worth mentioning when I move the slides manually like this, I don't see the, you know, it doesn't log a scroll. So all I have is my focus event. You know, the fact that I scrolled here with this function call doesn't matter. You can also use viewer set slide. So let's see what this looks like if I go ahead and move to the third one. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and now let's move back to the first one. Okay, so without that second argument, it will just put me at whatever the previous slide I was on, you know, when I was at this particular slide set. And I would also like to look at my scroll times, and you can see that we logged the initial focus, and then when I went to the third slide set, it logged a blur or focus lost event, and then it logged a focus gain again when I came back. I don't know if it's useful, but you can also specify that second argument as 0, and it's the same as not having a second argument. So if you have some sort of automated second argument generator, you know, you can use 0 to you know, just go to whatever slide was there before. If you're adding things to your image, like let's say for example, viewer add highlight, right? You know, like let's say I want to highlight, I don't know, right here. That might be 500 by 500. But it's like, well, what slide set am I on? You know, maybe I don't know. Viewer get current. So I can get my current set, and then I can provide my X and Y, and then I can get my viewer get current slide. So on whatever slide I'm on whatever slide set I'm on, I'm going to highlight something. And there's my highlight, appears right there. Okay, let's see. So that's what those two functions are. It's not explanatory. You know, this one's your current slide set. So this would be this first argument, and this one's your current slide, you know, which might be that second argument. Okay, so you noticed when we zoomed, or when we opened up the console or not, it noticed that something in the window has changed size, and it popped up this resize viewer option. Well, you know, how does it resize the viewer when I actually click yes? And the answer is this function, viewer reset size. Now that function is a little bit expensive. Any clicks you have on your image have to get their coordinates recalculated. The click image itself has to get redrawn. Any shapes you have to get redrawn. Shapes have to have their positions recalculated. There's a lot of recalculations. It's cheaper than loading from scratch, obviously. You don't have to reprocess the slide images themselves. But yeah, all the little widgets and stuff have to get redrawn and repositioned. So not the cheapest function, you know, call it sparingly. Okay, so in a previous tutorial, we, in the appearance one, we did the add shapes, and we just added a highlight. But what if we want to simulate a click? So, you know, this click right here. So let's see, so I could do viewer. Yeah, somebody doesn't have their console highlighted. Viewer, simulate, click. Okay, and let's just use the same arguments that we used for our highlight. So on our current set at 500, 500, and on our current slide. So, boop, and we have a click. If I were to click again, then just like a regular click, it would remove the click. You know, so this is in every way a click. The only way this is different is it doesn't actually reset viewer last click. So let's reset. Okay, and then let's simulate a click, and then let's get the click, and it doesn't know that a new click happened. So last click is only the user's clicks themselves. Your own clicks don't get, you know, they aren't something we care about. That said, the click log does recognize this click. So that's different from, you know, how the slide log behaves. You know, the scroll log, it doesn't pay attention to any manual scrolls you've done, whereas the click log, it always logs every click that is currently active in the viewer. So, you know, if I remove this click, you know, then it forgets it ever happened. But it basically just takes a tally of all clicks currently active in the viewer, and it returns those, even if they were your own simulated ones. And it's also worth mentioning that there are events that, you know, fire if a click has been added or removed, and simulating a click fires one of those events as well. Okay, so we've gotten scroll times and we've gotten clicks. One thing we haven't gotten yet is the shader log. We use shaders for windowing here, so for example, oh, I should have shown you before turning it on, but oh well, viewer get shader. So we have our initial, this is actually a message that we added saying that we added all of these shaders because we didn't want to log, you know, the creation of every single shader. Then we have the fact that we invoked the lung, you know, and so now if we turn it off, we invoked off. Okay. Another option we have with the logs is you know, when you used the set slide, it didn't log a scroll event. You know, maybe that bugs you. If it does, then whenever you call set slide, you can also call viewer log scroll message, and then we can just let's see. So we are on the third slide set. I could have used viewer get current set, but I'm not gonna. Scroll message. That basically injects a scroll message with a timestamp into our scroll log. So if I were to get viewer, we can see this message we just injected, and it has a little M for message. Okay, we can do the same thing for clicks. Okay, and apparently we have no clicks, so the only thing there is our message. And we can do the same thing for shaders. As you saw, we used a message to log the creation of all of our shaders rather than, you know, showing each one individually. So viewer log shader message. And this, because shaders are global to the entire CT viewer, we don't have to specify an index. So just be hi shader. And we have our message. Now we notice maybe the click log here doesn't flag that it's a message in any way. But we can look and we can see that click logs, or clicks themselves, have 4 components. So they have their X, their Y, their slice, and their time, whereas this just has the message and their time. So as long as you keep this you know, component separator, which we're using as a comma, out of your messages, so in this case never use a comma in your message, then you're okay, right? You know, if it has 2 components, it's a message. If it has 4, it's actual click. Okay, and I am going to do shaders slightly, so we can do viewer set shader. So this will turn on a shader with a name. So I'm going to activate this lung shader here. I think I just named it lung. All right, so, you know, and that's basically what this does, right? It just calls viewer set shader with whatever value is associated with each one of these. And we can see in our log, where's my shader log? Okay, that we, you know, invoked the lung. Now let's turn it back. Let's make it blue. Blue's nice. And then I'm going to call lung again. Every shader function has this optional last parameter where I can set it to false, and it'll still apply my lung shader, but it will not log it. So you can see I invoked lung earlier, I invoked blue, and I just invoked lung again. I'm currently in lung, but it didn't log it. And so this is good because, you know, how I initially created all of my shaders, I just put that false variable in the creation function for every single shader. So that way I didn't, you know, they could avoid the log. Another way I could have done it is you can reset your logs. Now this is completely destructive, so make sure you save your logs because they're probably something important. So you would save the log to a variable, and then you could reset it. And now if I get my log again, it's just an empty string. So I could have just created everything and then reset the log and then added the message. And you can do the same thing for reset clicks. So this reset clicks resets obviously all of the clicks on your slide, as well as emptying the logs. So this is actually how clicks and resetting the shader log differ. Resetting shader log only resets the log. I still have all of my shaders. Resetting clicks resets the click log, and it also removes all my clicks. I can also reset my scrolls. And now if I get my scrolls, it's an empty string. So yeah, so that's how you would clear something out if you wanted to restart, but definitely make sure you save any information there before resetting anything. That's very important. I don't know that I reset highlights, so if I click on something. So this is fun actually. I have a click, I reset the clicks external to my program, and that kind of broke it a little. Because now there is no click to be shown, and technically I can't remove it now. It's going to be there for all time, but I can click on it, show the highlight, and you can always do viewer, reset highlights for this particular slide set, and that's how you would clear highlights, that's how you would clear shapes. It clears all of them, clears everything but clicks. So, ruler, for example, this also, wait, actually, can I do that? Oh, I guess not. Let's bring back my ruler. Okay, so these are just shapes, but if I reset my highlights, it takes them away. And that's it.